Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Common Sense with Conn radio call-in talk show. We are here on KTEM 1400 on your AM dial, and if you would like to call in and have a discussion about something, the phone number here is 254 773 1400. Y'all feel free to call in and we'll discuss whatever it is you want to discuss. I do ask everybody to keep your conversation civil and don't get all excited and go to using vulgar language, because we'll just cut this kill button on the telephone if you do. But we don't ever have to do that. I'd like to compliment our listening audience. We've got a good, decent, good patriotic Christian kind of people that listen to this show, and I appreciate each and every one of you, as I do our sponsors. And of course we always need more sponsors. If you know someone that would like to sponsor this show, the phone number to call is 800, no, I'm lying to you, it's 300-1885. That's 300-1885. Anyway, that'll hook you up to my wife, and she'll take all your information and tell you how we can do all this. And basically, I just want to clarify that I've had people ask me how much I made doing this and how much KTM paid me to do it. And I just want to clarify, they don't pay me nothing to do it. I pay them to do it. So, they charge for their airtime. That's how they stay in business, I guess. But anyway, I enjoy doing the show, and as long as we can get sponsors to help us do it, well, we'll keep on keeping on. At any rate, there is so much to talk about today. Now, I normally make about 5 or 6 pages of notes to visit about, and then I've had so many good callers call in that I never get around to talking about my notes. So I don't have many, if any, notes today, but I would like to welcome Miss Lou Ann Anderson of the Logic Nation fame. She's going to be with us today on the show, and enjoy having her here as always. We're going to give Tina a leave of absence, but only for today. So she's not feeling too good. But at any rate, I'd like to welcome Lou Ann to the show.
Thank you. Always delighted to be here.
Well, it's always fun to have you, because we get into a discussion of some kind, and, I don't know, maybe just make each other madder than we already was, but anyway, looks like you brought some notes to the show, and I didn't. But anyway.
Oh, I always have articles that have just kind of piqued my interest and hanging on to in case they come up, the topics come up, that I can have a little background information.
Well, and, be able to talk logically and about a subject. And I think that's what's missing in our society today is, have we lost our ability to use some logic and common sense when discussing current events and current issues? Do we have logic that we can apply to the situation, whether it's the people at the border and the invasion, whatever you want to call it, or is it the LGBT rights group, or is it Antifa, or is it the protection of our our constitutional republic that we call the United States of America? What kind of subject do you want to bring up? My point is, if we bring up a subject, let's approach it with some common sense and logic and discuss it. And let's don't use radical, oh, that's a racist statement, or that's a bigotry statement, or that's whatever. I am so tired of hearing about victims, I could just scream. We got black victims and brown victims and women victims and white victims and brown victims, and I'm just really, really tired of that. I had a fella call in one day and he said he'd been chased down the street with a stick. Well, I've been run over by a bull and put in a hospital. I've been hit on the end of the nose. I've been kicked in the head. I've been thrown off a horse. I've been all kind of things. But you know what? When I got thrown off that horse, I had two choices. I could either lay there in the dirt and groan and grunt, or I could get over it, get back on that horse, and try to teach him not to do that again. You know, you pull his old head around and spur him in the gut and try to twist him into the ground, and maybe he won't throw you again. But it's the only two choices you got. When you're confronted with a problem, you can either run from it or you can run at it. And I think that most of my life I have chosen to run at it, not run from it. And I'm not going to apologize for that.
Well, and that's what I think is so missing in our society, in our culture today, is that people, when they do feel as though they have had some kind of slights, in some way they've been aggrieved or treated badly, they do, or rather they don't, look at, how do I reverse this situation? It's not up to somebody else necessarily to reverse the situation. Sometimes you may need to pull other people into it, but they never first take that step of looking at themselves. What can I do? Or have I done something that perhaps created this situation? If I did, what can I do to change that course?
And you know, how often do we make our own bed and then have to sleep in it? So, you know, very often we create our own problems, or as situation talking about victims, you know, we've got black victims and brown victims and women victims. Well, are you really a victim, or are you just too lazy to overcome the problem that you have?
If people would spend the same energy that's spent looking for someone else to blame, perhaps looking a little more inwardly at themselves and their own actions and how those things can be corrected, they might find that the situations are far more workable, far more solvable within their own realm, rather than have to go look to somebody else to blame the problem for and another individual to solve the problem for them.
But the first thing is you got to want to. You got to want to solve the problem. I brought up once before on the show a fellow I knew that he happened to be born in the United States of America, and he was a black man. Well, he went on to join the U.S. Army and retired as a lieutenant colonel, and he was a medical doctor. He called into this show an awful lot. His name was Cal. He was a fine, patriotic, good man. He did not grovel and lay around in the dirt complaining because he was born black. Another example I've used is a fellow was born and his mother had a third-grade education, and she raised him to do all that he knew how to do and let God take care of the rest. Well, I guess that's the way he led his life, and today he is Secretary of Health and Human Services. I think his name is Dr. Ben Carson. So he did not lay around and claim to be a victim. He just got over it and became a world-renowned surgeon, and now a Secretary of Health and Human Services, and a good patriotic, good man. So I'm just saying, what's your choices? You gonna lay there and grunt and groan and claim to be a victim, or are you gonna shut up and get over it?
And the creativity people show in finding venues in which to feel victimized or in some way insulted. This past week on Logic Nation, we were talking about the effort against certain songs and against different entertainment venues and products, things that we have been seeing for many of our lives for decades. Charlie Brown Thanksgiving got dinged because there was a scene in which Franklin, the black kid of the Peanuts gang, he was sitting on one side of the table and everybody else was sitting on another side of the table. So we made that a big racist thing. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, HuffPost this week had a big thing about when that just aired, that that TV show that I can remember as a child at 4 years of age seeing that show. And it's been going on for all these years, but all of a sudden now Rudolph is being bullied, Santa is a misogynist, and he's using slave labor. All of these things. I was reading some tweets from this HuffPost article. Some of them were actually funny, but they were equally sad and tragic because the people saying them, if they had been written in jest, if they had been written as satire, that would be one thing. But I take it that these people were truly offended that this evil Santa is using these reindeer and using some kind of cheap labor with the elves. I guess perhaps they're brought over here illegally. It's crazy that people can come up with this stuff.
Yeah, boo Santa Claus. But I keep quoting a verse or a scripture. I'm not sure if it's a scripture, what it is, but it is so true. I repeat it, I guess, too often. But someone said, in the last days, man will confound himself with his own intelligence. Whoever the intelligent genius is that figured out that you can't sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer anymore, or you can't talk about Santa Claus because, they need a job.
Yeah.
If that's all they got to think about, they need to go to work somewhere. But how often now are we seeing this just to the point of ridiculous idiocy? People sitting around in a back room dreaming up something to criticize about a song or about Santa Claus or about whatever. I'm reminded of, how many times do you hear someone refer to a black man who has done something right as, oh, he's an Uncle Tom? How often do you hear that? Have you ever seen the movie Uncle Tom's Cabin? It played again several years ago, and I watched it. I saw it as a kid. Do you know what Uncle Tom's Cabin was about?
No, I actually don't.
They say, well, it's about black slavery and how awful it was. Uncle Tom's Cabin was about a white indentured servant lady and a white indentured servant man who wanted to get married, but they were owned by two different owners. And they were white. They were indentured servants. Now, we never talk about that. We talk about how horrible, awful bad slavery was, and it was. It was horrible, awful bad. But when are we going to get over it?
And wasn't that type of arrangement not uncommon when people came over here from, say, Europe?
Yes, it was.
Someone would pay for their passage to come over and provide them room and board, and they would agree to move into.
And then whoever that was that paid the bill owned them. They owned them for that period of time, 10 years or whatever it was.
Right.
It was no different to being a black slave. At the end of the 10 years, they were freed. But quite a few black slaves were freed. Robert E. Lee inherited, or his wife, one of them inherited, I think, 133 slaves. What did he do with them? Oh, he freed them. Oh, he was a horrible, awful, bad man. Why was he horrible, awful, bad? He freed his slaves, and we're cussing him today. We're pulling up all the statues to him, all that kind of stuff. Why? Because some moron sitting in the back room back here dreamed up this idea that he was a terrible, horrible, awful man. We can't have a statue to him anymore.
And that speaks to the power of the education industry when they have control of the content of textbooks, of history books, to craft a narrative that perhaps fits more of an agenda rather than the actual reality of what happened in years past.
Did you know that, I read this somewhere years ago, used to, the school books used in the state of Texas was the model used by nearly every other state.
And it largely still is.
And do you know who reviewed all the textbooks? I've forgotten her name, but there was a lady in Austin that did that for years and years and years. She read the future textbooks and approved them or didn't approve them. And that one lady did that for a long, long period of time. Uh, what an amazing contribution that lady made to the education system in the state of Texas and in the United States. So now we don't have a lady that does that. I guess the Texas School Board does that, but uh,
Well, and when they have those textbook adoption hearings down in Austin, there's some of those in recent years have gotten very contentious, have been very hotly debated, and they really have something that has gained national coverage on more than one occasion.
well, and where does Common Core come from? Who invented that? Whoever invented it now has destroyed the ability for young kids to add two and two and come up with four.
Communist doctrine has long said get a hold of the education industry and you can, to some degree, affect complete societal change. And I think we are seeing
That's
that happen today.
So, nobody wants to talk, and I don't either. I don't like to talk about the idea of conspiracies, et cetera, et cetera. But whose idea is this? Where'd that come from? Where did Common Core come from? Where did this societal change, this dramatic change, where did it come from?
The old adage, truth is stranger than fiction, that did not come into existence for nothing.
Yeah, and I don't want to get off into conspiracies, but if you look at the things that are happening to our society, is this a gigantic conspiracy from somewhere with somebody? What's the other answer to it? I don't know.
Well, and that's where I think that they're almost, here we get a little deep conspiracy, but is there not almost a conspiracy to make the term conspiracy be a bad thing in order to give cover to the fact that they really do sometimes exist?
There you go, bringing up another another area for debate. Right now, we're going to have to debate about this break that we got coming up to try to pay a few bills. So, y'all hang in there, Luann, and I'll be back in just a minute. Oh, tell 'em about it, Bob. Tell 'em how to play that old fiddle and that guitar and create that Texas swing music. My goodness, does that want to make you want to get out there on that sawdust floor and grab that wife of yours or what? Or your girlfriend or next door neighbor or whoever it is. Boy, I just like that old Texas music. Can't help it. Sorry about that, folks. But anyway, I didn't grab Lou Ann and go to the hall and start dancing, so.
But it was a temptation.
It was a temptation, except the fact that they're putting down new carpet and you just can't dance out there on that glue. That wouldn't work very well. At any rate, here we are back on the air with Common Sense with Conn show. And the phone number to call in if you want to get a discussion started is 254-773-1400. So if you got something to talk about, well, give us a holler. Now, one thing that we can talk about is this breach that occurred with Marriott motels and all of the, 500 million people that lost their information in that hack job. We were just talking about the fact that there was quite a time lag between when it happened and when they announced it. So, back to the conspiracy thing, I asked the question, why did it take so long to announce it? Because the people that have been hacked, the longer it takes to find out that they've been hacked, the more time the bad guy has to harvest their money or whatever it is they're going to do with the hack job. So why, when a company like that, whoever it is, when they get hacked and all the information is lost, why isn't that put out to the public in the next 30 minutes?
Well, this particular one goes back to 2014, and the hacker had copied and encrypted information and then took steps toward removing it. And this information, it was taken from all of the Starwood hotel properties that they have, which besides Marriott, that includes Sheraton, Westin, Aloft. There's a number of them, and that data was things like names, mailing addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, passport numbers, the Starwood preferred guest account information, their date of birth, their gender information about arrivals and departures. And so just a vast array of information that could be used for a number of nefarious purposes.
Well, here again, why the time lag? But another question I've got is, how do you stop it? I know that I say this phrase too often, but when you reward bad behavior, what in the cat hair do you expect to get more of? Well, if the people that does this, if there's a long time lag and they reap millions of dollars from this hack job, what's to discourage other people from doing the same thing? Now, I don't want to advocate violence here, but if you find the people that did that and you do something to convince them to never ever do that again, and you might want to do that in the public arena so other people can see what happened. I don't know. But I'm just saying that if you don't do something, there's an old saying, there's nothing like making them feel the pain to make them see the light. And that is so true. Someone rapes a 2-year-old little girl and gets 6-month probated sentence. Well, what did we society do to prevent him from doing that again? What do you think that 6-month probated sentence is going to stop him? Now, let's compare that to the man down in Calhoun County. Had a barbecue, walked around the corner of the barn, and there was his little 2-year-old girl, daughter, out there. An old man had pulled her pants down or whatever, and the father of that little 2-year-old girl beat that fellow to death with his fist. Now, I brought that up on a show once, and the guy said, "Oh, that's murder." Well, you can call it what you will, but that man will not molest another 2-year-old little girl. It's not going to happen. There was a case in Brazoria County where a man was driving down the road with his two teenage sons, had a flat tire, stopped. The two boys got out and was changing the flat tire, and a drunk driver came along and hit both of them, killed both of them. When the police got to the scene to investigate, the drunk driver had a hole right over his left ear, and nobody saw anything, and nobody could find a gun. Now, I'm not trying to advocate that, but I'm trying to make the point that he was not rewarded for bad behavior. And that person will not do that again. The guy that was trying to rape that little 2-year-old girl, he won't do that again. So, and I don't advocate vigilante justice, that's not what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is you have to have some kind of punishment in order to discourage people from doing the same thing. If it's the hacking of all these accounts, what will happen to the person that did the hacking if they find him? What will happen to him? He cost millions of dollars, all kinds of misery to lots and lots of people, I guess millions of people. If they catch him tomorrow and find out who it is, what will happen to him? Well, maybe he'll go quietly into the night with his millions of dollars of profit that he made from the hack job. Then do you think that might convince other people to do the same thing?
You got to wonder. I mean, and in all actuality, this Marriott hack is not the biggest hack that's ever occurred.
No.
Yahoo had 3 billion accounts hacked in 2013, and then in 2014 they had another 500 million. Here we're at that same number with the Marriott Starwood, but Friend Finder Network, which is an adult dating and entertainment company, it had 412 million accounts attacked in 2016, while Equifax, the credit reporting people, who certainly have a lot of information that none of us want spread about the world, they had 146 million accounts in 2017. And so technology is certainly a key force in helping to correct this, and that is becoming a concern because look at who runs the technology companies.
Well, and back to what another thing I keep saying, and I'm sorry to repeat myself, but what is the greatest teaching aid known to mankind? It's example. When people do this to Equifax and get away with it and make millions and millions of dollars off of it, they set the example for now how many people are doing it. So if you rape a little 2-year-old girl and get away with it, and somebody sees you do that, then he's going to want to do the same thing. I keep saying it, but how does a baby monkey learn to eat bananas? He watches his mother eat bananas. It's example.
Well,
You know,
I wish these companies would follow the example that was put forth in our country, like after Pearl Harbor happened, and all of a sudden you had a convergence of technology, manufacturing perhaps more so during those times, and patriotism, because there was a point in World War II where we were making more weapons. Our country was making more weapons than the rest of everybody combined because there was a common, a unified front that we had to protect our country. We had to protect our interests. I'm not sure that a similar significant event happening these days would make technology, Silicon Valley, really want to partner with the American people to the degree that happened back then.
well, a lot of things have changed. For example, do you know where England got their guns to defend themselves against the German invasion? You know where they got the guns? Because they didn't have any.
Probably from us.
Yeah. There was a gun drive in the United States, and farmers and ranchers and town people donated a gun to send to England so they could defend themselves against the German invasion because they didn't have any guns. Those super intelligent people had outlawed guns.
And they haven't reversed that course yet. Now
No.
they're getting ready to get rid of the knives.
Yeah, and now they're going to outlaw knives. You know, that is it's so serious it's not funny, but it's almost comical. And we had a man run for senator against Ted Cruz in the state of Texas, and he was a big advocate of destroying guns or confiscating guns and opening the border. Do we have enough common sense to give some consideration? Let me see, if you open the borders and allow anyone that wants to come into our country, and if you outlaw guns and gun ownership, what if some of those guys that are coming in are bad guys? What if they're mucho malo and they want to kill you? How are you going to defend yourself? Well, the smart guy named O'Rourke just decided to confiscate guns and allow all these people to come in. When are we going to use a little bit of common sense and logic and say, whoa, hold the phone? We can't do that unless we want to destroy the United States of America.
And that's the mindset we're seeing within these technology companies that are overseeing this stuff that's happening with this hacking. There's a guy that I see on TV quite a bit named Morgan Wright, who is a cybersecurity expert. And I would encourage people to take a look at a piece he wrote this week in The Hill. It's called High Tech's Globalism is Slowly Killing Patriotism. He talks about how we changed, how we came together after Pearl Harbor. Similar things happened after 9/11, that technology and the government, the people, all united in one front, that what can we do to protect our country? But then you look at where we are today. We all know that Silicon Valley is largely liberal, but then you look at things, remember back in 2015 when that guy out in Riverside shot up that county building right at Christmas. In fact, it was December 2nd. So nearly 3 years ago tomorrow, he shot up that building. They had his cell phone. Apple wouldn't help break into his cell phone to try and find out who else he had been allied with. Same thing, Google, they just got, their employees just wrote a big letter because they're all freaking out that they were involved with this Pentagon project that was a program for using artificial intelligence to do some type of surveillance type work, but it was going to have a defense application. And oh no, we don't want to be involved with weapons of war that could protect our country, could defend our people. We can't do that. And so this is the culture that is surrounding these companies, and it's something that we all need to be mindful of.
Okay, apply just a degree of common sense to that. That what was their thinking that, oh, they can't contribute to that? Unless I'm mistaken, they turned around and agreed to help Red China on some of their...
Exactly. Because
again,
these are the people that have been taught to be a citizen of the world, not that citizenship in the United States is something to be treasured and protected.
well, we're seeing this movement to hate America, destroy America, blame America. There's a world full of victims of America. So if you follow that line of thinking, then you would agree we have to destroy America. We have to get rid of this Judeo-Christian society, especially the white people in it, and in particular the white males. There are universities and super smart college people that are advocating getting rid of white masculinity. Here's John in Belton. He's going to explain all this to me. John, can you clarify this for me real quick?
Well, I may be a little bit off subject here. There's a couple of things I wanted to mention. You're talking about World War II, and the United States was pushing out 2.5 to 3 ships a day, faster than the U-boats could sink them. And Miami, to get back to the group trying to get across the border, the police chief, it was or the mayor of Miami, told the people of Miami to arm themselves when Cuba opened their jails, and they had the flood of Cubans coming into the Miami area, because he told them we can no longer protect you anymore. But the main reason I called was this young police officer in Dallas that accidentally shot this black man. I think it's horrible. She thought she was in the right apartment, and the door was ajar, and she came in and shot the guy, I guess after she told him to freeze. But it's horrible. It was just such a horrible... But what's even worse is I think the city of Dallas thought the blacks were going to burn the city down if they didn't do something.
Well, John, let me ask. I just heard a piece about that. That guy lived on a different floor than she did.
I believe he was on the 3rd floor, and her apartment was directly above his on the 4th floor.
This is what bothered me was I went to Austin Bergstrom a couple of years ago, and I parked my car on the wrong level, a level that I normally didn't park on. And when I came back to my car later on after seeing a friend off, I couldn't find my car, and I swore up and down it was stolen. I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find it. Finally, I realized I may have parked it on the wrong level. I can understand where an accident like this happens. You may walk up to the wrong car and put your key in it and realize that it's a car that looks like yours that happened to be parked near you.
Well, I understand. I understand that, John, but I also understand that not every police officer has a halo above their head. Not everyone is perfect in every way. And you can't really get a grip on this until you have walked around the corner of a house and saw your son standing in the driveway, unarmed, no resistance, everything was yes sir, no sir, and the officer approaching him with his hand on his gun, unsnapped the strap to his pistol, and was just fixing to draw that gun and shoot your son. My point is there are police officers, people out there in law enforcement, and thank goodness there's not but just 1 or 2% of them, but there are some out there that wake up every day wanting to kill somebody.
What does confuse me about that is this apartment, there's no indication that there was any other entry or exit point from this apartment except for the door, unless perhaps you wanted to say there would be an outside window, but again, there were 3 floors up, so accessing, going in and out of that window from on the 3rd floor would not seem very likely. And so what I've never understood is why, when someone was there, even if she thought it was her apartment, why did she go forward more engaging with the individual? Why not withdraw from the apartment, keep your gun fixed on the door should he try an exit, and meanwhile call for backup? And again, I do agree with what Conn is saying, and that those split-second decisions when you're in a stressful situation, you hope the police have been trained for some of that, but she was a young gal, less experienced. But to me, there was a de-escalation of the danger. There was that option that was available, and I've always just wondered, why did she not withdraw and then keep him contained?
Well, and we have to back up our police, and I'm not criticizing police, but when you see, for example, here lately, we've seen an officer shot a man because he wouldn't drop his knife. He didn't shoot him once, shot him 16 times. Now, what is in that officer's brain that makes him just keep shooting and keep shooting and keep shooting? There's something wrong with that guy. There was a case in Cleveland, Ohio, where they ran down an older black couple because their car backfired in front of the police station. They ran it down, shot the car full of holes, killed the 2 people. And then a Cleveland, Ohio police officer jumped up on the hood of the car, fired 16 rounds through the windshield into the dead bodies. Is he still a policeman? What's wrong up here?
And what's sad is that there are enough instances like that people of any race have fair reason to be concerned. And with that, to John's point, I agree that the city of Dallas is making a calculation regarding the racial intensity, the racial components of this case, and that is coloring some of their actions. And it just is a very sad situation that's obviously it's ended up tragically for the victim and his family, but I think it's a tragedy's going to happen with this girl too, and it just is a very sad situation all the way around.
Well, and I heard just one thing. Did the victim and the woman police officer have some kind of relationship in the past? Now, if that's the case, that brings another dimension to the case. Uh, there's all kind of things to look at here, and I think we should not rush to judgment. But on the other hand, we need to make a reasonable judgment and look at all of the circumstances of these kinds of cases.
I went on the website of that apartment complex and looked at it because I've lived in Dallas for many years, still spend a lot of time up there. I was curious where it was and things like that. And looking at that website, it reminded me of apartments my own daughter has lived in recent years. And with it being as new as it is, I would imagine that it had one of the more electronic like locks on the door. And that with that, I found it interesting, if that is the case, that door would have been ajar. Because one thing I'll tell you, when you're loading and bringing in groceries or anything else into an apartment with those doors, they're kind of a pain because they constantly will slam shut and you're having to fight to keep them back open. They aren't doors like in older apartments where it's easier to leave them ajar.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying we need to look at all the aspects of this case. Not rush to judgment. It's
okay. Well, thank you very much. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, no, it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds, and hopefully there will be some of these questions answered one way or the other, just to try and find some degree of justice in this situation.
Well, and my fear is when we go down this road of assuming innocence because of the uniform that they had on, can we afford to go down that road too far? Now, we need to cut some slack to police officers and people like that. We need to cut them some slack, but not to the idiot, ridiculous, bitter end. I'm thinking of Sergeant, what was his name in Illinois? Lost 4 wives. The last one drowned.
Oh, Drew Peterson.
Drew Peterson. See, when they came in and found his wife drowned in the bathtub, they automatically assumed it was an accident until somebody else got to investigating it. So how much slack do we cut someone because he's a sergeant in the police department? They finally sent him to jail and convicted him of murder, but he was free for a long time.
Right. And he also had a history of some domestic violence as well.
Yeah.
And so there were red flags earlier on, even before this gal ended up dead.
Yeah, and I want to stress, John, thank you for your call, because you done you done got me stirred up here, I guess. But on the other side of the coin, well, I'll bring that up on the other side of the break. We got to go pay a bill or two. Y'all hang in there, and we'll be right back. Okay, folks, here we are back on the Common Sense with Conn show. And if you're tuned in, you hear me, it might sound like that I am critical of police officers and what they do. And I do not want to leave that impression. I might bring up a fella, and maybe I shouldn't mention his name, but I was stopped not long ago at night by a Bell County deputy sheriff. His last, well, I don't know if I ought to mention his name or not. I might get him in trouble. But he was just very, very nice. It was at night. He walked up beside my truck and he said, "You changed lanes without a signal, whatever." But he did not treat me like a criminal. You know, I don't know if he gave me a warning ticket or not. I'm not sure. But my point is, it was at night. He did not walk up with his hand on his gun. He did not call for backup. He did not overreact. He treated me like I was a decent human being. I was stopped just the other day by a highway patrolman out on Loop 340 or 363, and that highway patrolman wanted to tell me that I had a headlight out. He walked up. Here again, he didn't have his hand on his gun. He didn't overreact. He treated me like I was just a common
And for your own safety and the safety of other drivers, FYI, your headlight, because that's a tough thing to always be aware of.
Right. But, you know, and I was stopped twice by a patrolman on Loop 363. Very, very good conversation. Very good. I mean, I wished he'd have moved in next door. His name was Tom Hipper. Sadly, he was killed not long after that. But he stopped me twice, and I was very, very impressed with his demeanor, his courtesy, if you will. So there are a lot of good people out there wearing a uniform, but I'm just saying we need to be aware that there are a few. The guy that I'm talking about that was very nervous, acting with his hand on his gun, act scared, and that worried me because I've got another friend that same situation happened to. His daughter was on a motorcycle, and this same guy got her off the motorcycle, spread eagled her out there in the ditch, and she's wearing a T-shirt and a pair of shorts. She wasn't armed.
Right. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for a weapon to be concealed.
Right. And why treat an average citizen like he or she is a hardened criminal that's going to kill you at any minute? And I think, like we were talking a while ago about victims, I think we need to be careful not to leave the impression that everybody wearing a uniform is a victim, because they're not. I had a very good conversation once for about an hour with a chief of police in a small town in Montana, and he just over and over and over said, "Oh, it's just hell being a policeman in this town. It is just awful. It's just terrible." And keep in mind, this little old town had an almost zero crime rate, and he kept going on and on and on about how horrible it was being a policeman. Finally, I said, "Chief, when were you drafted?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, when were you drafted?" He said, "I wasn't drafted." I said, "Then why in the hell don't you quit?"
Yeah.
But the pure fact is, I couldn't buy your job for $100,000. So what are you bitching and moaning about? I'm just saying, sometimes we overreact. We make ourselves a victim when we're not a victim. We don't have any right to be complaining and carrying on like that. At any rate, I sure am enjoying this show, and I hope Lou Ann is. We're enjoying having her here. Even if she has got me stirred up on some of these subjects, but I think we're down to 2 minutes before the break. So I said a while ago something about example. I would like to. Is this?
Oh, yes, we do have a call.
Yes. Yeah, we have a caller.
We got a caller. Raymond is holding on the phone there. Raymond, go ahead on.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make a brief comment concerning that shooting that officer shot that guy in Dallas.
Yeah.
You know, this is what my common sense 73-year-old brain tells me. This is just my own opinion. This is what I think happened. That officer and that guy lived in the same apartment complex. They saw each other. They knew each other. Apparently, they was having some type of an affair. That woman is full of bull crap. She's going up and in and out of that apartment day in and day out. And then she accidentally says she's in the wrong floor. That guy probably had that door open for her for when she get off of duty, just come on in, baby, you know. So I think that that's probably what happened. So therefore, she was saying she was on the wrong floor, and she saw some movement and thought that was her apartment. Then she took her own action and shot that guy in that room in there. But I think they was having an affair. It went wrong, and she was trying to quit it and get rid of it, and he didn't want to. And that's just my own opinion, and that's what I think that happened, and that's
Well,
just what
I
think.
would guess there's some security footage that could perhaps confirm that one way or another.
Yeah.